researched the minimum daily requirement, even that isn't very clear. That's one question. The other one is I wanted you to talk more about fish oil supplements and the different kinds and what you think is, which one you think is better, I guess.
Okay, no follow-up, Keish? Okay, so...
I'm interested. I'm taking the fish oil supplements.
Okay, so we'll get through this one so you can do the break. So the vitamin D, we don't know. It just looks more and more promising. It's one of the fat-soluble vitamins. In theory, it's toxic at high doses. There's very few cases of vitamin D toxicity anywhere. You're supposed to get microgram amounts. The only one who was toxic misread the label and was taking milligram amounts for microgram amounts that were recommended. 1,000-fold what he was supposed to get. That's one of the few cases that's out there. So the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is for about 400 international units. The people out there are recommending 1,000 or 2,000. The USDA has an upper limit that you're not supposed to go above and beyond. It's about 2,000. But in reality, at that level, there's no toxicity. There's extremely rare toxicity. We still don't know if it works, okay? But it looks like it probably works, and you can't get it from food. So I would take 1,000, 1,500, I might take it myself. And then a quick fish oil one, we don't have any idea which fish oil. You should eat fish twice a week, and if everybody in this room eats it, it's okay. If everybody on the planet eats fish twice a week, the seas will be depleted of all fish in 10 years. So it has to be just between you and me, okay? Don't tell everybody else, okay? Fish twice a week, because we don't know if it's EPA, DHA, is it 1-to-1, 2-to-1, how many milligrams? Oh my God, I have no idea. Does it have mercury in it? I don't know if it has mercury in it. Is it farm fed? Is it not farm fed? Is there flax in it? Did they feed the fish flax? That's insane. Let's take a break.
So we're going to take a break. I'm going to ask... I'm going to ask you guys to help out our gracious host by taking up your empty glasses, your empty trays up to the front here. Order more food, order more drink. We'll have plenty of time. It's a singular time that you come here to talk about nutrition with a lot of people. So I put all of the video, all the information from tonight on the website, sciencecafesf.com. And more importantly, I ask every single speaker to talk about ways that you can further your education and knowledge on this issue. And that's what Christopher is about to talk about now.
Okay, am I on? I'm back on. So I actually don't think that there are very many useful resources for you. The single best one that I think is out there is actually the Berkeley Wellness Letter. Every time something hot comes out in the newspaper, the Berkeley Wellness Letter, instead of just saying, wow, here's the headline, they say, a new study came out. This now adds to the 20 studies that came before it, and now the 21st suggests no change at all, or a subtle change. Or it was intriguingly done in a more efficacious way, and so this really is the best study out there, and it dispels all the controversy that went before it. And then a couple years later, they'll run the same topic again when the next thing comes out. And if you're a member, especially for something like supplements, if you're a member for this thing, it costs like 28 bucks a year to get a monthly newsletter. You can go back online, and if you were interested in chromium, you could see that they covered chromium a year ago, and 5 years ago, and 12 years ago, and you can pull them all up to see how often they updated them. For a lot of these, and sometimes it's food. It would be broccoli, or it would be something else. So Berkeley Wellness Letter, for one. The second one that I like is the Center for Science and Public Interest. It's the Nutrition Action Health Letter. They're a little more radical. They're also a little more practical. So they often take the same topic and deal with it the same way. They put it in perspective. But they have these really interesting sections in the back. For example, they have food porn every month. So in the food,
I think in the back we didn't hear that.
Food porn, like pornography. So they have a product that's available that's marketing itself as something healthy, and they expose it for being exactly not what it says it is. And then they actually will do a side-by-side comparison of something comparable. So they have the good and the bad. Every month, they also have a whole list of things. Okay, so let's say breakfast cereals. We decided breakfast cereals should be ranked on fiber and minimal amounts of something and high amounts of something else. And so we picked these 6 things because we're smart enough to pick 6, and we gave them a score on the top 6, and here's our top 10, and here it goes all the way down the list to the 51st cereal, which we think is the worst pick out there. So a lot of really practical things like that that the Berkeley Wellness Letter doesn't offer. So those are my 2 favorite that I get all the time. I would say there's a Tufts Health Letter from the East Coast and the Harvard Heart Letter. There's an environmental nutrition letter that's actually not so much environment. It's about the same thing as the other ones. But my favorites are Berkeley Wellness and the Center for Science in Public Interest, which is the Nutrition Action Health Letter.
All of those will be posted on the website within, I don't know, after I wake up in the morning. So, does anyone have any, first of all, questions about those new newsletters before we move on to another question? Oh, perfect. They just understood that perfectly. So our first question is in the back here. Does somebody up front have a question on the newsletter?
Yep. Just wondering if the Consumer Reports health letter should be on that list.
For a while I was getting Consumer Reports, and it was just such a repeat of the other 2 that I already got. I just couldn't take reading the same thing a 3rd time. It's probably pretty good. I think they've done an excellent job with some of those topics.
Really? I thought they were there for cars and vacuum cleaners and such.
No, they branched out. The Consumer Reports has a health letter too. I only read it for a little while, so I can't say I know it very well. But the couple topics that they covered, they did an outstanding job of covering.
Okay, our first question is here in the back.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm kind of nutritionally lazy. I don't really pay attention to a lot of the stuff going on because I do think that it's really confusing, and I kind of want to wait till somebody figures it out. Just eat lots of colors, like you said. That's kind of what I do. But I got to thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could go someplace and have my genome decoded and have someone say, hey, you know what would be good for you to eat that isn't in your diet? And I know that there's a lot of progress on the front of like personalized medicine, and I was wondering if it's just total pie in the sky to think about personalized nutrition, or is anyone looking at that?
Before you answer, you're used to this now. Who here actually goes to a nutritionist or somebody that personalizes their nutrition profile for them? Anyone? Oh, a few people. And I'd love to hear your experience of going to a nutritionist.
It's not really a nutritionist. I go to an Ayurvedic doctor who is helping me to detox. I'm taking a huge amount of antibiotics for Lyme's disease, and my digestion has just about shut down. I'm curious to know if you...
We're going to get to your question, but I'd love to hear your take on personalized nutritional advice.
Yeah, bunk. Okay, are we all done with that one? I don't think they'll ever figure out the genetic predisposition for things. So there are some genes that are different between races or between certain subpopulations, but within that group of people, the variability is much greater within that gene type than between other ones. So it's sort of like the 4 blood types. Did anybody ever see that book, The 4 Blood Types?
Eat right for your blood type.
That was insane. I mean, you actually can't what you would have to go through to test that. I've never read it. I have to admit, I never read it. I just don't have time to read all the hokey books that are out there. I was just trying to picture how they would test it. They would take people with the right blood type and give them the wrong diet for 50 years to see what they died of. No, it's really not going to happen. The stuff that they thought it was going to protect you from, they'll never be able to test it. So they're perfectly safe writing that kind of book.
But I have friends that did it and they loved it, and their bodies felt really great, and they ate right for their blood type.
Is it okay if I follow up? So
yeah,
right
absolutely. But
type,
can you repeat the question so everyone can hear?
She has friends who tried eat right for your blood type, and it worked really well. Okay, let me give you this clue. You ready? If everybody in this room tried the freakiest diet on the planet, at least 1 or 2 of you would swear it was God's gift to you. Okay? And when it was, you'd be very vocal about it. And so the problem is, that's what we hear for the most part of the anecdotal stories of a couple people that it worked for, and we're all so different There isn't one thing that works for any of us. So we try it, we don't notice a difference, we go on. We try it, we know it doesn't make a difference, we go on. 3 or 4 people it worked for swear God has enlightened them and they heard a voice, and then they tell everybody to jump on board, and then when you do the clinically randomized trial with 1,000 people, it worked for 3 out of the 1,000, the 3 really vocal people. So it may be true. I just have seen so many anecdotal things shot down when you tried the average person.
There's a question there. I'm going to come to you.
Can she follow up? You know,
Yeah.
there should be a discourse. I think you should follow up.
Well, in addition to that, I'm sort of one of those freaky people that goes with the trends of diet. And I've done everything from parasitic cleansing with the walnut, fresh ground walnut, fresh clove, and glycerin to draw the parasites out, et cetera, which was based on a nurse who wrote a book called Cure for All Cancers. And I've done macrobiotics where I've had an Oriental diagnostician from the Kushi Institute do a complete Oriental diagnosis on me and balance my acids and alkalinities vis-a-vis macrobiotics. So, I mean, I've actually, if there's a trend, I pretty much jump it, you know.
And so how do you feel?
Well, actually right now, I have done a radical difference in my diet because I used to be, when I was macrobiotic, I felt fantastic, but I was macroneurotic because I literally could not eat with anyone else. And if someone invited me to dinner, I would make my own food and bring it with me to the dinner. So, I mean, I really got to the extreme level with that whole thing. And I have a tendency with diet and nutrition to get that way because I was introduced when I was very young to organic foods and to a very radical program by a guy named Kerry Reams who did everything from minerals, vitamins, to clonics, to exercise, to you name it. And it was a real full package of stuff. And he used saliva and hair samples to do a chemical analysis or a formula on people and then diagnose what they needed to change and basically prescribed.
Fascinating that you've done all that. I don't want to dismiss that if stuff works for you, but along those lines, somebody said Ayurvedic back there, and I will say I'm much more intrigued by something that developed over thousands of years than the last 10. So if somebody came up with a new genetic probe of your hair or your saliva, I'm not quite as convinced as somebody in Ayurvedic medicine who actually knows that in one culture tomatoes are hot, and another one they're cold, and it has nothing to do with the physical temperature of them. You have to be a hot or cold person, and you have to take that particular food because it neutralizes something. That's fascinating. It's built on thousands of years of experience, but not many people do that well or do it around here. And plus,
is anyone on a historical diet like the Ayurvedic? Well, we know you are because you asked. But is there anyone else that's on sort of a historical diet?
Someone here?
Yeah. I use Chinese medicine, and in Chinese medicine, nutrition is part of it. It's like the herbs are the really concentrated form, and food is the lighter form. So I do ask, but it's really, Chinese medicine is really organized. So they have the different flavors and different types, like what part of the plant. So it's less the one particular thing than sort of eating roots or this or that.
Does anyone subscribe to Michael Pollan's last ism, eat what your grandmother considers food? Anyone think they eat remotely what their grandmother eats? Yeah?
I go, would my grandmother recognize this as food? And absolutely a question that I asked myself because I thought that was the most illustrative point that he made in his book. It's something so simple you can ask yourself when you go. It's not a whole list of really complicated rules. It's, would my grandma think this is food?
That's too bad because Twinkies are really good. We have another comment over here.
Well, actually, the last few comments were sort of coming around to what I was trying to say, and that's that I think, well, the Eat Right for Your Type, I actually did read that book, and what it was trying to say was that blood types are based on what part of the world your peeps came from, and that if your people came from Asia, you should follow a certain diet. If your people came from Europe, you should follow a certain diet. And basically the premise of that is that no one diet is correct for everybody. It really depends on you and your personal metabolism, your personal, what makes you feel good. A lot of people really love soy products. I can't digest soy. You wouldn't want to be on a long car ride with me after I had soy. So, you know, what works for some people doesn't work for everybody. That's what I want to say.
Well, I'm from Buffalo, so I eat a lot of chicken wings. Is that good for me?
Let me follow up on that. So the Maasai warrior grew up eating his meat and drinking his raw milk, but he doesn't get that here. He doesn't get a Maasai cow. He gets a hormone-enriched, corn-fed beef. So if you're going to follow your blood type and you can't eat what you evolved on, that would be a different way to follow. You wouldn't be following that path, I don't think.
But I'm okay on the chicken wings, right?
You're totally okay on the chicken wings.
Okay,
we'll talk about that afterwards.
So what if you fed him high carb?
Pardon me?
What if you fed him high carb when he's used to eating all the meat?
What if you fed this guy high carb? Actually, I don't know what would happen if you fed him high carb. When he came to the U.S., after being incredibly healthy up till he was 18 years old, he became horribly sick eating Western food. He was scheduled for massive operation. At the last minute, he met the raw milk man from Fresno. He had become incredibly lactose intolerant, drinking American milk, and the guy offered him a glass of his raw milk, and he's such a humble guy, he said, I couldn't refuse, and I cringed. I closed my eyes and I drank the whole thing, and I was ready to just be in intolerable pain. And I wasn't in any pain, and the next day I had another glass and another glass. He canceled his surgery. He drinks a half-gallon of raw milk every single day, and he nursed himself back to health.
But doesn't that sound just like an anecdote?
Exactly. It's an anecdote, but he got better right away. He canceled his surgery. I find that much more compelling than telling you to drink raw milk for the next 40 years so that you won't have a heart attack. So there is something to that raw milk for him. Is it the blood type? Is it evolutionary? There's a lot of those anecdotes we can't prove. We can't even study them. Because of the way the American food system is, we can't even ask those questions because we don't have those foods available. Those natural, sustainable foods are so hard to come by.
We're going to go right.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could say more about the peoples that eat pretty much only one type of food, like the Eskimos or the Chukchi, or that eat only whale or seal or caribou, and they have, since they're so far north, they have virtually no skin exposed, so like there are no vegetables, no vitamin D from the sun. How is it they're not, dead by 25? I mean, how do they...
The vitamin D is easy. The vitamin D is from the marine foods. So since they eat so many marine foods, that's how they get their vitamin D. Otherwise, if you look at those cultures that I showed slides of, their infant mortality is horribly high. Their death from accidents is horribly high. They harpoon one another, or they fall out of the boat, or things like that. The Tarahumara Indians, incredibly high infant mortality. But if you live past that, so it's a very unique population. If you live past the infant mortality years, and if you run 26 miles a day, you can live on corn and beans. If you survive to be an adult Eskimo, apparently you can live on polar bear and whale blubber and seal blubber. So complicated.
Yeah, but you know how it is that they do that.
So the human being is just incredibly malleable. That's what is so stunning, is that after we keep saying there's this one diet, you have to follow this diet, there isn't this one diet. There are hundreds of options for you because we adapt so much. How do the street people live eating nothing day after day, or drinking beer, or getting horrible nutrition? We are incredibly malleable. So we got over the nutrient deficiency diseases. Are the Eskimos living the optimal life? Are the Tarahumara Indians living the optimal life? No, they should eat our food because they're not quite eating enough fat or enough carbs. I don't know, it's all in the context. If you run 26 miles a day, you can pretty much eat whatever the hell you want. If it's all plant-based. If you're an Eskimo out there and you're hunting for fish all day and you're lugging that kayak around all day and you're that physically active, apparently you can eat a lot of anything. But if you're not out there living the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, then it doesn't work. How many of you live that hunter-gatherer lifestyle? You don't live that active lifestyle, and you're forced to eat crappy packaged foods that's ubiquitous all around you. So You know, if we all moved back to the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, our health would dramatically improve, whether we went north or south or east or west. But we're not doing that, so that's not what the discussion is. But it's a great question.
Raise more hands if you have questions, just so I can spot you. So on my route, I'm going to ask a question as I go around. There's a dirty word we haven't uttered yet, so if you're scared, cover your ears. Exercise. We were talking a lot about health and disease and nutrition, and then everything, all these studies point to exercise. So how do you balance all of this? I haven't heard you mention it at all, outside of running 26 miles.
But I'm not an exercise physiologist. That's got to be another session. No, I just feed and bleed people. I don't run them.
How about personal belief?
Personal belief?
Yeah.
I rock climb, I play ultimate frisbee, I bike ride, I play tennis, I chase a 4-month-old, a 2.5-year-old, I try to keep up with a 14-year-old. I'm very active, but only that's what I do.
Oh, that's great. We have a question right here.
Actually, that kind of answered my question, because it seemed everything was pointing to just exercise, and if it doesn't really matter what the heck we eat, and if we're just getting a lot of exercise, is this a whole moot point?
It would be a moot point if we all got a lot of activity, and we don't. How many of you run the equivalent of a marathon every day? How many? And it's not, exercise is not the proper word. It's really being physically active, because exercise sounds like grunting and doing something repetitive, which it is. There's actually a technical definition to exercise, and it differs from being physically active. So if you're physically active, it definitely loosens up the things that you have to eat to be healthy. But so many of us are insanely sedentary that it becomes much more important what we eat. So basically, there's an exercise physiologist that I work with, and you know, most of us eat, if we're fairly sedentary, we eat somewhere around 2,000 or 2,500 calories a day. Elite athletes eat 6,000, 7,000 calories a day. So after they eat a good meal of 2,000 calories worth, they can apparently eat whatever the hell they want for the last 4,000 calories. As long as the first 2,000 or some 2,000 was nutritionally appropriate. They can eat table sugar after that because they're burning so much energy. They're out there rowing their hearts out or running a triathlon, but not many of us are like that. Those are elite athletes.
I don't want that to stop you from ordering food from the Atlas Cafe at all. Just because you didn't get out of your office today doesn't mean you shouldn't support the Atlas Cafe.
Okay, I'm going to try and squeeze two in that are pretty short, hopefully. One is, I've heard anecdotally that if you cook your foods above 120 degrees, that you lose some of the vitamin nutritional capacity of it. Something about the chemically, these things shift, change, I don't know, I'm not a scientist in that way. And kind of related to that, I've also heard anecdotally that over the last 100 years, agricultural practices have degraded our soil so much that the nutrients we get in our food are less than what they have been in the past, and perhaps some of the very smaller, like trace minerals that we don't sort of see on the FDA daily, chart in particular are missing. And so can you speak to the need for supplements in that range as well?
Before he answers, what do you think? You asked the question.
Well, I tried, like Cell Food, one of those nutritional supplements just on the trace mineral level, and I felt really good for a while, but I don't know if that's just because I got an extra glass of water a day or, I don't know.
What about the 120 degree thing?
I'm not inclined to eat a lot of raw food. I like warm food. So, I'm hoping the answer is go ahead and eat cooked food.
I hope so too.
Okay, so the cooked food makes a lot of it more palatable, right? So you were only going to eat raw broccoli, and it's only good for you if it's raw. So since you couldn't have it raw, you went to McDonald's instead. Right? So that totally backfired. So you have to put it in that context. What would you eat instead? So cooking releases some nutrients, and cooking degrades some nutrients. And if it's raw, some are bound and you can't get them. And if it's raw, sometimes it's better. Right? And there's no hard, fast rule. You have to go nutrient by nutrient, food by food. So it's going to sound so boring, but if you get a variety of foods, and some are cooked, and some are raw, so have salad greens in a salad, and have cooked greens in a stir fry. right? And you'll eventually get them all if you have that kind of variety.
As long as there's 5 colors and not tomatoes, at least in the short term.
Wait, we still have the trace minerals. Yeah, it's true that there's a certain number of minerals that the plants won't grow without, right? So a certain level of them are not missing, but it's some of the trace ones that are. They've been leached out of the water, they've been over-fertilized. The only reason they grow is they got a desert area and they filled it full of fertilizer and they watered the heck out of it and they drained our water reservoirs where food should never ever have grown in the first place. And yeah, it's missing some of those trace minerals. So for that reason, should you take a trace mineral, multivitamin, multimineral? Yeah, that would be one place where it wouldn't hurt. Now, which multivitamin do you take? That would be a whole nother question.
I would like to know whether you think that the Food and Drug Administration should regulate and approve supplements. And I ask you this for 2 reasons. Number one, because I am an attorney myself, and I do represent large pharmaceutical companies as my firm, and I do see, and I'll tell you why. I do see how onerous and expensive the approval process is, and I also know, even though we don't do representations for that kind of thing, and I also know how orthodox the thinking is at the FDA and how difficult it is to get approval for things whose effects are not well known or difficult to ascertain. And I also, the second reason that I ask is that once these things are approved, the jurisprudence is moving in a direction where it is very, very hard to sue companies for approved drugs. And I think just given the way that the court is going, it's going to get harder and harder. So just I wonder, the reason I ask is because I wonder whether the oversight would eliminate many of the supplements that are currently offered on the market, for better or for worse.
So before you answer, guess what question I'm about to ask you? Should the FDA, what do you think?
I don't think it should. And the reason that I don't think it should is basically what I just said, because I think it would eliminate most of the choice that's on the market. I think it would be very, very hard for companies to get approval for many of these products, especially because the effects are unknown. And I also think that many of these companies lack the resources to push the product through approval, especially when that's all they sell. It's extremely expensive.
Does anyone disagree? Oh, right here. Why do you disagree?
Well, I think that if the effects are unknown of this material, it should probably not be sold willy-nilly as a supplement for anything. So I think that as a reason why it shouldn't be seems incorrect.
One more comment.
Related to the FDA, my uncle recently quit working for the FDA because they essentially wanted him to rubber stamp various opinions or whatever, and as a scientist, he refused to, so he quit.
So we're all over the map here, from the legal perspective to just the personal feeling of like they should be there to protect us, to actual personal experience with the FDA. What do you think?
It's a moot point because it can never happen. There's too many varieties, there's too many botanicals, there's too many mixtures. Somebody did a survey of how many products that were out there. I can't remember how many hundreds of products there were, with several dozen manufacturers of each product, multiplied by the number of combinations of cocktails of those products. For what? For blood sugar, for cholesterol, for heart disease. So what's happened over the last 20 years is as soon as somebody says, yes, we should regulate that, the lobbyists go to Washington and they say, oh my God, how could you deny the American public what comes from food anyway? It'll take hundreds of years to prove that this stuff works or not. So you're going to deny the American public the chance to take control of their own health and not see their physician and read up on this themselves and really take charge of their health? That would be so un-American. It's just never going to happen. The expense is just out of proportion. I mean, the FDA has a hard enough time with drugs, right? Imagine what it would be if it had to be supplements for which there isn't the money to prove if they work or not. What would they be regulating? You wouldn't have any supplement out there. They'd all be gone.
That would fix the overpopulation problem. If health becomes illegal, we'll all die. If the animals can
Keish, what are you doing? Ordering food back there? Come on. Ah, okay. Am I in charge? You got to tell me if I'm in charge. For next question. I got folks up here.
Oh, just going back to the Ayurvedic doctor, and a quick question on that subject.
Sure.
Okay. The treatment is okay. My question is, part of his treatment is detoxification. How do you feel about the importance of that to good health?
Of course, hang on. Who has gone through a detoxification program in some way, shape, or form? I personally have. That's a great question. The question was, what does it mean? And, okay, you want to answer?
So eliminating through the urinary tract, eliminating through the colon, eliminating through the skin, and through the lymph. And yeah, how is it different exactly? I mean, they're different in Ayurvedic medicine. This doctor has me sweating, for instance, hot oil enemas, particular tonics to boost the digestive system to have a bit more fire and to work a little better. Just how do you feel about this form of medicine?
Go. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know what a I don't know how they define these toxins. Your body's all set up, your liver, your kidneys built to do exactly that. Can you enhance that? Probably. What would you measure to make sure it worked? Did you feel a lot better? I bet you spiritually you did. You're paying attention to a lot of that stuff. There's no way I've never seen any research on that, and I don't really, it's probably out there.
Do you do anything like that?
I'm going to pass. Nope, not at all. Personally, I don't do anything like that.
For all those with hands in the front, I'm way in the back, and I'm going to be coming up to the front after this.
I had a question to see if you had a perspective on fasting. I read that there was a study that said that people who fast once a week are healthier in some way, I can't remember how, than people who don't.
So people who fast once a week are different than people unwilling to consider fasting once a week, and that's one of the problems. So is it good for you? No, your body thinks it's starving, and it goes into some bizarre processes, but once a week isn't that big a deal. You probably lose a little weight that way. It's a control issue. It probably makes your head feel better. I've never seen any of the studies on it. It would be hard to study, to randomly assign people. You know, we'd get back to that reductionist model of science that would ruin it once you did it. I don't have a good answer. Let's keep lowering that bar of expectation out there, okay? He's coming up. Well, he said he was coming up front, but he's drinking his beer.
Hey, are you criticizing me, Christopher?
No, not at all.
Drinking? You said dark beer.
Is it dark? Yeah.
It is a dark beer.
Can I have a sip? Thanks. Okay.
Would you like a beer?
Yeah, can I have a smaller one, though?
Yes. What kind? We have a number on tap.
Guinness.
Yeah, Guinness. So I think we'll take care of that for you right now. We have a question right here.
Hi, I'm one of these guys that I don't run 26 miles a day, but I exercise a lot, and I have heard that athletes, especially endurance athletes, sweat like 5 or 10 times as much in a lifetime as they're supposed to, or whatever, and they should take massive amounts of minerals because they're losing massive amounts of minerals through their sweating. And I'm just wanted to know if there's any truth to this, or whether this is just a way of selling me more supplements.
So look up Dr. Clive Wilson on the website. So Clive Wilson is a recreational power lifter. He was in the Navy. He's got a PhD in biochemistry, and he trains elite athletes at Stanford and UCSF. And he's got this great website where he's got a lot of stuff on elite athletes and that much activity. And basically he says, you know, water with a little salt in it. All the sport drinks are bunk. All the special precautions are bunk. Yep, you sweated a bunch, but it was electrolytes, and they're really easy to replace. Nothing fancy. Chocolate milk often works as well as anything else out there. So save your money on those expensive sport drinks. But look him up because he has some really specific answers to some of those questions that I don't deal with. Nutritional, elite athletes, that's a whole nother area of nutrition.
So his name was Clive Wilson, and he
Wilson.
says I should drink chocolate milk if I exercise. I like him. I like him a lot. We have another question.
Yeah, hi. You suggested that there's some problems in the basic funding of science. It means that certain kinds of questions are just not likely to be asked, like the broccoli versus the red meat. If you could, say, hey, I want to do 2 studies, and somebody would provide the money that you think really ought to be done like that, like broccoli versus red meat, what would they be?
Wow, that is a stunning question. I'm all powerful here and I get as much money as I want. What would I do? Oh, that's intoxicating. My head is swimming.
It's so far from the realm of possibility, he can't even answer it.
It really is. The problem is there isn't any one question. I think I would try.
Pick 2.
2 questions. The one that I would really like to do right now, honestly, would be to randomize half of a group of people and tell them all about health messages, and half of them I would give the political, ecological, global message and see how well they were, what their diet looked like. I'm actually not so interested in what it is you eat, because you can eat a whole lot of different stuff and be okay. I'm interested in what will motivate you to change your diet and keep your diet changed for the rest of your life. Because if it does help, you can't do it for a month, you can't do it for a week, you've got to do it for the rest of your life. So our biggest issue is the behavioral side. How do we motivate you? I think some of these other messages are more motivating. So that is the study that I would love to do right now. The other study...
Hey, Christopher, in your experience, in any of your studies, have you noticed anything that did make a behavioral impact? Because telling me to take 12 pills a day does not work really well.
No, but the group that I work with, I want to plug them a little bit. So we have an interdisciplinary scientific group. We have cardiologists, epidemiologists, biochemists, exercise physiologists. I'm the nutrition scientist. And the other half are all behavioral psychologists in our group. And they don't really care what it is you change, your exercise, your sleep, your stress, your diet. They recognize that all those are lifestyle changes that are really hard for us to make long term. So that's what we study all the time, is how do you motivate someone, first to make a change and second to keep it? And we don't have the answers.
Since you're plugging yourself, what was the question up there?
I missed it.
Well, I recommend getting older, because when you get older, you symptomize, and so there's a feedback loop.
So everyone here, get older. I think we can do that.
Wait, he wants my second study back there. He's holding up the second finger.
The second one. But before you answer that, I want you to plug yourself. Do you have any open studies that you want to advertise right now?
I have 2 studies. We're almost done recruiting, but you have to show up at Stanford about 5 times. How many of you could drive to Stanford 5 times over 12 weeks? Really? Oh, okay. All right, so if you want to plug our own studies, go to nutrition.stanford.edu. It'll be on his website tomorrow.
It will.
Nutrition.stanford.edu.
After 10 a.m.
And there's an online screen that you have to see if you're eligible, and then if you are, you have to get a finger stick for your cholesterol and your blood pressure, and that also determines your eligibility. One has to do with getting antioxidant pills versus antioxidant foods. Another one has to do with getting flax oil versus fish oil at low doses or high doses. And they both involve seeing what your inflammatory state is. That's the hot new word in medicine, is inflammation seems to underlie a lot of these disease processes. So somebody has high cholesterol, they never get a heart attack. It's because they had low inflammation. Somebody had low cholesterol and they do get a heart attack. It's because they had really high inflammation. So cholesterol doesn't predict everything. Nothing predicts everything. So inflammation's a hot new topic. There's no standard screening thing. You have to be in my study because your health insurance won't cover it. It's probably coming around. Somebody said CRP, C-reactive protein. They're starting to measure that in some clinics. It's probably not the best sign, but it's the most standard one out there.
As somebody in the study, it took Christopher an hour to explain inflammation to us that were in the study. So it's not a simple question. And he didn't give a simple answer, I will say that. So we only have a few minutes left, and I want to squeeze everyone in as possible. So I'm going to ask that we go to the lightning round. It's where you ask a question, and I'm not going to ask you how you think the answer will come.
Thank you. You've touched on supplements, and obviously fresh is better, but I'm interested in knowing your experience and or take on superfoods type green powders that maybe have extracts of things like sea vegetables and goji and maybe herbal extracts and that sort of thing. Anything you can say on that?
Okay, I have this vision in my head of this superfood pill, and it's a magazine ad, and it's got broccoli and bell peppers and squash and carrots and grapes and garlic and everything, and it all ends up in this little tiny pill. Oh my God, there is no way. So you got 1/100th of broccoli, and you got 1/500th of garlic, and you took a pill? Yeah, it was better than drinking nothing. But no, those have to be worthless. You'd have to take 100 of those to get what you'd get from a plate of broccoli.
What about spirulina?
So I don't really think of anything about those. Yes, they're superfoods and they're natural, but there's not enough. You need to have a stir fry. You need to have a salad to get more of those. It's absurd. Okay, so what if you eat like crap all day long, and before you go to bed you pop 2 of those at night, and you're not going to change? You're always going to eat like crap? Maybe it would help a little, but probably not noticeably. I just can't think there's anything to cramming all that into some tiny little thing.
We have a question over here.
So we know you work at Stanford. Where else have you done studies, and what can you tell us about how Northern Californians differ from the rest of the country?
Oh my God, well I haven't done studies anywhere else. The whole thing was a mistake, the vegetarian restaurant to the faculty member, so it's all been out of whack, and it's all been at Stanford. And Northern Californians, yeah, I have to admit, when we report our papers and we say, yes, we would like to generalize this to the entire United States, once in a while the reviewer writes back and say, yeah, posh, they came from Palo Alto, right, just like that's representative. I'm from the middle of Kansas. Nobody eats like that where I'm from. So Northern Californians eat healthier in general. However, even though Northern Californians eat healthier in general, you can go to any town, almost any household, and see a wider range than you can from Northern California to Central Kansas, right? So in this room, I'll bet you we have some really awful eaters, and I bet we have some health freaks, right? In this room. And so the average in this room was different than the average in the middle of Kansas. But within this room, we have a much wider range than that average versus average difference.
So we're actually at time. I'm going to ask a giant favor of you, Christopher. Would you be willing to stay a couple minutes after and answer questions personally?
Yeah, individually up front? Sure. Yeah.
So it's 9 o'clock, and I want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to ask their questions. So Christopher's going to stay afterwards. I want to first and foremost thank all of you for coming out. This is an amazing turnout. This is nothing that was answered tonight would have happened if you didn't show up. So I encourage you to tell your friends about science cafes. There are 6 throughout the Bay Area, all geared to doing this for you, providing this service for you. If you're willing to come out and have a beer, a dark beer preferably.
Red wine?
Red wine is fine too. If you order some food, that's great too. So I encourage everyone to get involved in the movement. If you're inspired by what happened tonight, come talk to me. I will help you start your own, let's just say. Thank you again. ScienceCafeSF.com. You can find out more information. You can see the video from tonight. You'll get information about everything that Christopher said tonight. I'll put up on the website. One little plug for me. I do this pretty much because I care about the movement of science. And if no one ever gave me $1, I would do it every day of my life, because it is just fundamentally, I believe in the power of good that can come from all of us gathering here on a Monday night, even Tuesday nights, and talking about science in this way. It is a departure from the way that society exists now. So I do it out of the graciousness of my heart. If you feel called to give a donation to support my advertising and drinking of dark beers, there is a donation jar where I'm standing up front here. Give whatever you want, but it is deeply appreciated that you even came out tonight. So I thank you, and a round of applause to you. Secondly, I want to thank our gracious host, Atlas Cafe, who provides us an incredible space. Thank you so much, especially to Sandy behind the counter, who works diligently every third Monday here. So we're here the third Monday of every month. Next month, we're going to be talking about the toxicology of everyday products, specifically glue. Who uses glue? Who here has died because of glue poisoning? I'm guessing nobody. But a few people have. It's actually it's going to be a very interesting talk. The man that's speaking, Dr. Paul Blank, was featured on Science Friday, talking about the interactions of the chemicals that we use every day that you don't even think about. So it should be an interesting talk. I offer tours as well. This Saturday we're going to a winery and doing a hike. Next month we're going to the recycling facility in San Francisco to learn a little bit more about how San Francisco recycles. Keep an eye out for more tours in the future. And just thank you again for coming. And there's one more person that we're missing thanking tonight, and that's Christopher Gardner, who drove all the way from Stanford, so that's at least $50 probably by now. This doesn't happen without a scientist deciding that this is important and his willingness to relate to all of you. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you deeply for coming up here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all.